Hello, I wanted to discuss in this video the Venerable Hoffman 1A adjustable radiator vent made by the Hoffman Specialty Company. This is the current model manufacturer, which you will be able to find, and its primary advantage is that it is adjustable, so that if you have a radiator that is overheating, in theory, you can reduce the venting hole to allow for greater control of the heating in a particular room that the radiator is heating. So this threads onto the radiator as single pipe steam radiator valves usually do, 1/8 inch threaded male threaded pipe. This is the tongue, which allows water to drain out and steam to enter and pass each other without getting in each other's way, in theory. And this is the index, which you line up the various numbers on this shell, and this is how you're supposed to adjust it. Got to loosen this, but I would take it all the way off because you want to be able to see what's going on, and I'll explain in a bit. So it threads in there, and the vent hole is there. So if you open it up to there, that's the most that this vent can vent at any one time. The vent hole is very much larger than the Hoffman 40, and so for a large radiator, if you want to vent it fairly quickly, you want to put it at 6. Here, as you can see, we have a little manufacturing snafu in that number 6 is actually partially restricted. So you want to observe exactly how much of the hole is covered or uncovered directly before you thread this down. Then you want to hold this very securely in place with your fingers while you dog this down. And the only trouble is this can get shifted if someone wants to play with it. So you got to really keep an eye on this. And let me show you what I mean. As you turn this around, more and more of the hole is covered, which should reduce the amount of venting of the radiator. But as you can see, there's an incredibly wide variation. Even though this is set at 1, that's almost unacceptable. The main advantage of this is that it actually will have a greater venting capacity, and it is, in theory, adjustable. But I've got some issues with this sloppiness here. The other thing which I've seen in the past is sometimes this gets cranked down so much that these little standoffs get crushed, and this will then cause it to seat down on here and actually block the venting of this vent. So let's take a look at some of the antecedents of the Hoffman 1A as currently produced. This one was one that I removed from a radiator a couple of days ago as of this filming, on a radiator in Baltimore, and this one actually has a date code on it of 1936. This is based on the Hoffman 1, which still has a patent date of 1914 on there. The adjustable portion of it is this fella right up here. You have a knurled nut, a captive nut, and you lift and move this ring, exposing different size holes over the orifice. And the orifice is actually right by this little detent here, this detent knob. And that's the smallest hole there. If you can see that. And the largest hole is right there. And there are 6 different decreasingly smaller holes, sized holes, until you get to the smallest one. And of course it says number 1. It doesn't even say number 1A on here. I know this was made after 1926, after 1923, because this here, this drain system was patented sometime around 1923. The reason why this vent failed was because it had been painted, and all it takes is a tiny little bit of paint to fill those holes, and this vent becomes inoperative. The next model, and the first one that I think they really called the Hoffman 1A, and you can see there it says 1A on this annular ring. So they kept this ring of different holes, and the captive nut and the detent and the fixed orifice, the 6 fixed orifices. They've simplified the construction considerably. It no longer has that sort of Art Deco industrial Chrysler Tower look about it, but is much simpler, lower profile. They've dispensed with the long tube and gone to the tongue. There are no patent dates on this at all, but a search of the literature shows that this shows up about the 1954 version, so this is an early 50s design. The next one is this guy here. This one says patent applied for, no dates or anything like that. They've they've actually went the opposite way. They actually made this fairly complex, harder to adjust really, too many moving parts, too many expensive parts. This is actually a fairly rare version. I see a lot more of these out there than these, even though this is definitely a later design. And I don't think they made this for very long. They quickly went to this version here, which shows up in the 1960s. So there really wasn't a long time between this and this. So I have a cutaway version here for you. What would be a video without a cutaway version? So let me show the internal construction. This is, of course, the expanding liquid chamber with the alcohol mixture in it. Let's see if you can see the... I don't see the spot where they sealed the container. So all of the air enters here, passes up through here, and exits this hole here. The chamber, there's the index mark, and again the different closing of the orifice depending on where you put this stamped metal piece here. So again, a venerable history stretching back over 100 years for this vent. It is still a viable vent to be used if you have a fairly large radiator. This will help heat it a little quicker. But again, the value of the adjustable venting portion of the show is somewhat diminished by the lack of reproducibility of this vent cover here. The one that I would recommend nowadays, if you want an adjustable vent, is the #1 Vent Rite, and it has the advantage of your numbers are easy to read and are reproducible. In other words, if you go too far, you test it and you open that and say, it's a little too hot, you can go back, oh, it's too cold, or you can put it somewhere in between, and you can change it with fingertip control much more easily than you can this vent. This does not vent as much as this, so I would put this on a radiator that it was definitely overheating, or where you really wanted to choke back the steam on this. Internal construction of this is a little different. There again is your boiling, expanding liquid chamber. And how it's adjusted is by controlling this knob. You're actually bringing a screw up and down, which raises the chamber a little bit closer to the outlet, and allows for a little bit more time, and makes it for a greater space for this to allow more air to escape. You can adjust that by putting your mouth on this and turning this and getting a sense of how much the venting can change by turning this wheel. So this is, in my opinion, a worthy successor to the otherwise venerable Hoffman 1A. And that, I trust, does not offend too many Hoffman fanboys out there, but this is proven many times to be a superior vent. I thank you very much.